Whether geopolitics, terrorism, insurgencies, regional and economic security, or information warfare, there's no one better place to take you behind the curtain, into the corridors of power, to show you what is happening behind the scene than the insider. Sponsored by Command 11, hosted by Syed Khalid Muhammad.
Hello and welcome to The Insiders, sponsored by Command 11. I am your host, Syed Khalid Muhammad. We've been busy for the past couple of weeks with the political unrest in Pakistan since the elections. What we have coming into power is going to create more issues from a security and a geopolitical point of view for Pakistan, but we'll talk about that in other podcasts. Today we are going to talk to you about the situation in Afghanistan. The holy month of Ramadan is due to start on the 10th or the 11th of March. So we will expect a quell in fighting in Afghanistan and the number of attacks in Pakistan during the month of Ramadan. But after the month of Ramadan, we need to be looking at a very serious security situation in Pakistan and in Afghanistan. Let's start off by talking about Afghanistan and the weakened Taliban government there. The Taliban, since taking power roughly two and a half years ago, has tried very, very hard to build inroads in with different groups that are operating inside of Afghanistan, whether they be former members of the Taliban, whether they be former supporters of the Taliban, or whether they be considered Al-Qaeda members, trying to build some kind of an alliance where they were able to form a government where they would be able to control and protect Afghanistan from the potential of, again, being invaded by a foreign country like the United States did in 2002. What we've seen is over the past 2.5 years, the Taliban has been unable to achieve any of its real goals. From a security point of view, every country in the region is under threat from different groups that are being given safe haven inside of Afghanistan. The problem here is that the Taliban itself is not one cohesive group. The Taliban is a conglomeration of numerous different groups that have come together with the ideology of governing Afghanistan under Islamic Sharia law, but the understanding of Sharia law and the following of different leaders is not under one roof, as we would say, which is why we see the Haqqani group taking so much power inside of the Afghan government. A lot of people will be familiar with Sirajuddin Haqqani, who is the leader of the Haqqani group. He is the interior minister for Afghanistan, which would be at the level in the international community of a secretary of state. So you have to understand that the Haqqani group carries a lot of weight inside of the Taliban in terms of leadership, in terms of sway, in terms of power. Now, when we talk about a weakened Taliban, we are talking about a weakened Taliban in terms of government. We are talking about a weakened Taliban in terms of a military. And we're talking about a weakened Taliban in terms of being able to establish itself as a strong social state. Now, keeping those things in mind, we need to look at the different terror groups that are operating inside of Afghanistan against Iran, against Pakistan, against Uzbekistan, against Tajikistan. Numerous mistakes have been made by the Taliban. We need to be clear about this. Numerous mistakes have been made by the Taliban. Whether you want to call those mistakes misjudgments because they were trying to appease Pakistan, because Pakistan does have the military strength to roll through Afghanistan. It also has the ability to be drawn into a conflict that will be never ending, much like the 20 years the United States was stuck in Afghanistan. So the Taliban has been working very, very hard to keep Afghanistan and Pakistan relations at a certain point so that Pakistan will continue to trade, supply food, supply materials, so they could rebuild Afghanistan. Their intent was never to keep any cordial relations with Pakistan, as we saw from many of the statements that came out of Afghanistan when the Taliban first came to power. And on the specific point of the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, Balochistan Liberation Army, where Pakistan specifically asked the Taliban to take action against these groups, but the Taliban showed a very soft hand. We need to understand a few things when it comes to these things. Now, behind the Taliban is Al-Qaeda. And many people have forgotten about Al-Qaeda because Al-Qaeda has not carried out any major attacks in many, many years. I think the last spectacular attack that the Al-Qaeda leadership has planned and carried out, in their terminology, spectacular attack, was the attack on the World Trade Center in 2001. Since then, Al-Qaeda has been on the back foot, and they have been only able to carry out very small attacks, very focused attacks, including the recent attack on the Pensacola Air Base in the United States. With a weakened Al-Qaeda and a Taliban who is unable to keep power, it has created a power vacuum inside of Afghanistan. Now, the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan was very, very close with both the Haqqani group and with Al-Qaeda, and many of the reasons why the Taliban was unable to take action against the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, better known as the TTP, was because the Haqqani group was of the belief that they stood by them during the U.S. occupation. They fought shoulder to shoulder with them against the U.S. forces, the NATO forces, and it would be wrong for the Taliban to take action against a brother organization. Now, this is a phrase that was made in a statement that was made in Afghanistan. It would be wrong to take action against a brotherly organization who has stood by them and fought side by side with them on the demands or the requests of the state of Pakistan. When we keep that in mind, we also have to look at the picture from the point of view that the Taliban, without the Haqqani group, will collapse. The Haqqani group is the bare bones power structure behind the Taliban. Without Haqqani, you are talking about a Taliban that is unable to control Kabul, much less anywhere else. And when you are talking about not being able to control Afghanistan, that would turn Afghanistan into a war zone like it has never seen before. So when we talk about the TTP, where I started this conversation at, when we talk about the TTP, their support lies within both the Haqqani group and the old Al-Qaeda leadership that still exists inside of Afghanistan. Al-Qaeda has continued to support the TTP because, again, they fought side by side against the U.S. forces, against the NATO forces during the occupation of Afghanistan. Now, what we're seeing at this point is the TTP has numerous problems within itself. The TTP started off under Baitullah Masood and Hakimullah Masood as one central force. There were no splinter groups. Since Baitullah Masood and Hakimullah Masood have left the leadership by drone strikes, we have seen the TTP splinter into anywhere from 16 to 32 different groups. And those 16 to 32 different groups have all had their own various issues with the central TTP leadership. One of the reasons of bringing Nur Wali Masood back as the leader, of the TTP, was to bring some reunification amongst the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. Now, that reunification has comprehensively failed. A lot of people are going to be commenting and saying, well, when we look at Twitter and we see all these different groups that are aligning with the TTP, we see a lot of groups that are announcing that they have pledged allegiance to the TTP. Yes, they have. That's not something that we're disputing. Much like in the last couple of days, we have seen that Hafiz Gul Bahadur group has also pledged their allegiance back with the Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan. The problem that you're going to see here is these reunifications that you're seeing is not because of Nur Wali Masood. What we understand here at Command 11 is that we will see a very significant change in the top leadership of the TTP post-Ramadan. When I say post-Ramadan, we are talking about April, mid-April, early May. I would say probably about by the middle of May, we will see a change in the top leadership of the TTP. Now, this change will be brought by the Haqqani group. This is something we're the first ones to say, and I know we're going to get a lot of flack for saying it, but the Haqqani group will be the first, the driver behind the change in the TTP leadership, because they have seen that the group is not working. Now, many of you are going to wonder, what do we mean by the group is no longer working? The TTP on numerous occasions has sat down to negotiations with the government of Pakistan, both on the Haqqani group's sponsorship and under the Haqqani group's moderation. But what we found is that many TTP fighters, many of the splinter groups, were very disenfranchised with the idea of negotiating with Pakistan. They were also very disenfranchised with the leadership of the TTP, because they did not make a more aggressive move against Pakistan's Fatah region, against Swat, and against the regions, the areas that were controlled by the TTP back in 2007, 2008, 2009, when the TTP was at its full strength inside of Pakistan. Now, because of that, we have seen numerous TTP fighters change their allegiance from the Taliban to the Islamic State Khorasan Province. Now, I'll get to the Islamic State Khorasan Province very shortly, but I'm going to cover this TTP issue and let people understand a little bit more. What we're seeing here is you're seeing a shift in power, and we've been talking about this on Twitter quite regularly. There's a shift in power now. Afghanistan is going from what used to be a Taliban-led Afghanistan to what is going to be an ISKP-led Afghanistan. Now, a lot of people are going to say that, there's no way that's possible. There's no way that the Taliban can be defeated in Afghanistan. When the U.S. couldn't do it, how can ISKP do it? ISKP is very different. They are different in terms of the way they operate. Now, the Taliban's own vision, ideology is specifically Afghanistan-centric. It is not to control any other areas. They just want Afghanistan, and Afghanistan means all the way across to the Durand line in Pakistan. Now, the Durand line in Pakistan is roughly around where Ataq is centered in Afghanistan. So you're talking about literally the entire Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province that would be absorbed into Afghanistan if the Taliban were able to control what they want to control. When we talk about a group like the Islamic State Khorasan Province, ISKP has a very multifaceted approach, from their recruitment, from their vision, from the way they operate. They are looking at controlling the entire region. They want from Afghanistan all the way across. So you are talking about Pakistan, Afghanistan, Iran, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan, and parts of China. This is what the Islamic State Khorasan Province is looking at. And in terms of how they're operating, you are seeing that, well, I'm sorry, you are not seeing it, we are seeing it, that numerous groups, numerous TTA, Tehreek-e-Taliban Afghanistan, and TTP, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, fighters are pledging their allegiance to the Islamic State. Now, the numbers that we have been able to confirm is it's between 100 to 400 fighters daily that are switching allegiances from both the Taliban and the TTP to the Islamic State Khorasan Province. That is a significant number. Significant from the point of view as the Taliban being able to fight so long inside of Afghanistan has been successful because of the Pashtun support they had. What ISKP has been able to do is they have eroded the Pashtun support. They've taken that from them as well. They've taken the border region along Afghanistan, whether it be Khost, whether it be Nangarhar, whether it be Kunar. These provinces are now under ISKP control. They are not. They are no longer under Taliban control. ISKP has also been able to bring the warlords that were in control of those regions across the border of Pakistan into their fold. Now, that's one side of the story. The second side of the story is when you look at what ISKP has been able to achieve inside the Central Asian republics. You have now found that ISKP is supporting every single group, whether it be insurgent or terror group, that is standing against Uzbekistan, Tajikistan, Turkmenistan inside of Afghanistan. They are supplying them, they are training them, they are giving them full support so that they are able to, at any point, attack inside those countries, which fits into what the ISKP ideology is. This ideology is going to be a problem. Right now, a lot of people have put ISKP on the back burner. They don't consider ISKP to be a threat at this time because they're looking at the Taliban and the Taliban leadership. But ISKP has been kept out of most people's eyes, and most analysts don't talk about ISKP as much as we do here at Command 11. The problem that you have is that post-Ramadan, we are going to see a civil war start in Afghanistan. And it will be a civil war on the level where ISKP, along with its affiliated groups, and this could include the Haqqani group. We're saying could, because we're not going to openly say that the Haqqani group has changed their allegiance yet, because their support is with Al-Qaeda. And until Al-Qaeda has completely weakened to the point where they can no longer support what the Haqqani group wants, we will not openly say that the Haqqani group will move to the Islamic State Khorasan Province. But if the Taliban is going to control Afghanistan, they're going to have to be able to defeat the Islamic State Khorasan Province. And that, at this point, looks like an impossibility. For the simple fact that the Islamic State has been able to bring in leadership from around the region. It has brought its previous leadership from Iraq. It has brought fighters from Syria. It has been able to train up a base inside the TTP fighters that are at the level of commandos. These statements will seem very odd to you at this point, but about a month and a half down the road, when you come back and listen to this podcast again, you'll understand that what we were telling you on the 29th of February was solidified and realized in the middle of March, in the middle of April, in the middle of May. And you will find that these things will now become very important. Now, keeping that off to one side is in the Afghanistan conflict. You are also seeing the Baloch Liberation Army gaining a great deal of support from ISKP. This will be the first time that most people will make this connection. The Baloch Liberation Army has continually and openly said that they are an independent insurgency fighting for the separation of Balochistan from Pakistan, and Jaish-e-Adl, who is a Irani group who is fighting for the separation of Sistani Balochistan from Iran, so they can create what they call the Free Balochistan country from both the Balochistan provinces in Afghanistan, Pakistan and Iran, combined into one country that will be the leadership, that will be the country that will be ruled by these Balochis who feel that their rights are being trampled upon, and that their resources are being stolen from them. Now, one of the things you'll see is over the next 3 to 4 weeks, the next month and a half, I'm giving you two separate timelines. You are going to see an increase in attacks from ISKP and TTP on Chinese targets up in the northern and in the western part of Pakistan. These attacks will be against Chinese interests that are based around CPEC projects, around CPEC investments. So CPEC will become the core issue that will be the target for ISKP and TTP. Secondly, you will see BLA now looking to up the ante in Balochistan. With BLA upping the ante in Balochistan, that means going after Chinese interests, because China is considered to be the financier of the oppressor. A lot of the BLA literature comments on China this way, saying that the Chinese money in the CPEC project is going to the oppressor of the Balochi people. It's going to the people. It's going to the state of Pakistan, who is stealing the Balochi resources, and all of these resources and these oppressions are being sponsored by China, which has made China a target for the BLA. Now, many of you will remember in the past there was a couple of attacks in Quetta on Chinese diplomats. There was the Mastung attack on Chinese on Chinese workers. The TTP attacked in Dasudam, Chinese workers there. China has regularly been a very thin thread throughout the entire insurgency terrorism movement inside of Pakistan. What you're going to see now post-Ramadan, what you're going to see is a very, very significant increase in targeting of Chinese targets. Now, many people in China are already aware of this. They have put pressure on Pakistan. They've put pressure on Afghanistan. One of the reasons that we believe that the Chinese have accepted a Taliban ambassador inside of China is because they are putting pressure on that ambassador to make sure that Chinese interests are not affected. Now, China does have a very large mining contract that they want to see implemented in Balochistan Province. If these attacks continue, or they are to uptick, or if the ISKP were to take Afghanistan, China would be out of the ballgame. And what you would find is you would probably see the PLA, the People's Liberation Army of China, coming into Afghanistan and dealing with the Taliban and the ISKP problem on their own. And that is something that we don't want to see from the Pakistan side. Now, we've talked about where the TTP fits in. We've talked about where ISKP fits in. We've talked about where BLA fits in. We've talked about the weakness in the Taliban leadership. What we need to understand is the next 4 to 5 months in Pakistan, with a unstable government that will not be able to form security policy in any way, shape, or form, because there is not any synergy amongst the parties. A military that is more concerned about making sure that the government stays in power, that investment comes into Pakistan. They are not ready to be a proactive force, as they are more of a reactive force. And to keep all of this in one dialogue, the problem of keeping Imran Khan and PTI at bay will create another security issue in Pakistan. And that security issue can be exploited by any one of these groups. Now, the next 3, 4, 5, 6 months in Pakistan. Pakistan is in a financial position where they are very close to default again. If the IMF, let's say it that way, even if the IMF gives Pakistan a $6 to $8 billion bailout, it will not be enough to bring Pakistan out of the problems it's in right now. China has, in the last 48 hours, announced that they are going to stay the $2 billion loan that they have given Pakistan for 1 year and not raise interest rates. That is also no good for Pakistan, because that debt stays in place. And Pakistan, if they need to go knocking at China's door again, we'll be looking at much higher interest rates than what we've already done. I believe the last loan we took from China was at 7.1%. keeping that in mind, also with CPEC projects going on, and CPEC during Imran's government took a major hit. Development slowed down, investment slowed down, and the CPEC potential generation that we could have seen from CPEC disappeared completely. Now, what we need to keep in mind is that China is China, and they are going to be looking at maintaining what they want to achieve through CPEC, through the one road, one belt, one road initiative that they have started. What CPEC is part of. Now, if China at any point decides that Pakistan is unable to complete its CPEC responsibilities, as part of the CPEC agreement, Pakistan has given up its motorways, it's given up many of its government assets as collateral to China for CPEC's investment. That will create another issue for Pakistan economically. That's another place where security can be affected, because when economic security is at risk, the people are more willing to support a change in government. The people are more willing to accept another outsider coming in and taking control of the country. Pakistan is in a very, very sensitive state, and from our point of view. And for Pakistan to be able to achieve what it needs to achieve, it needs to get its feet firmly on the ground. And the elections that happened on the 8th of February, up until now, we stayed quiet because we wanted to see what was going to happen with the government. And the government that's come to power, whether it be in Balochistan, whether it be in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, those are both border regions with Afghanistan, border regions that are very sensitive, border regions that have continually faced conflict. And now with the governments that have come into place, we do not see any potential for a cohesive security policy. That cohesive security policy is the only thing that could protect Pakistan and the potential investors coming into Pakistan. Where we will be looking over the next 4 to 6 months is whether Pakistan is able to find any kind of way to bring PTI to the table and quell its supporters so that there is some sort of political stability in the country. With political stability will come economic stability. With economic stability will come stability in the people. Meaning, when I say stability in the people, I'm talking about food security, humanitarian security, where people will be able to work, be able to earn, be able to buy, and be able to live life normally. If these things do not happen, Pakistan could become a powder keg. And many of you who follow us on Twitter at Command 11 will understand that we have repeatedly pointed this out, that Pakistan is in a lot of trouble. And the trouble that Pakistan is in is going to create many, many, many more issues. And those issues will not go away easily. We would like to see Pakistan find stability, but we don't see it happening with this government that's in power. We held off for so long between podcasts. We've been talking about doing this podcast on Afghanistan and Balochistan for a long time. We put Balochistan on the back burner for right now because we thought Afghanistan was more important to talk about, because that is the center of where the problems in Pakistan are going to come from. But the government that's come to power, it is going to create more issues inside of Pakistan than what we expected. And over the next few months, Pakistan is either going to find itself going towards a positive position, or it's going to find itself at war. And our belief at Command 11 is in the next 2 to 3 months, Pakistan is going to go back to war. And by war, we are talking about what Pakistan saw back from 2007 to 2011, when the TTP was at full strength. It was fighting. There were suicide bombings. There were car bombs. There were huge explosions in the country. We lost 80,000 lives. We are going to go to a level that will be 2 to 5 times greater than that. And it will be because of government instability, political instability, economic instability, where these terror groups will be able to leverage their propaganda to bring more recruitment in, to bring more people to their side, to support the idea that democracy has completely failed in Pakistan, the military has completely failed in Pakistan, things that have been part of their narrative for many, many years. This will be the problem coming forward. We have a very, very serious issue in Pakistan. And Afghanistan is one of our security concerns, but we have many other security concerns. This podcast was specifically about Afghanistan. We've talked a bit about Pakistan's economic issues in it as well. We hope and pray that Pakistan can find its way forward. And we don't see it happening with the situation that we have in the country right now. This has been Syed Khalid Muhammad. I am the host of The Insider. Pakistan Zindabad.